maybe some things other to do tonight as well, so we want to go ahead and get started. I first want to thank you for coming. We had no idea what kind of crowd we would have tonight. We had a really good crowd Tuesday night for our elementary parents. First of all, I'm Michael Davis, Director of Hardin County Schools, and I'm assuming this is middle school, high school parents, and we welcome you here tonight. Before I get into kind of telling you some things and some information, I want to recognize our school board chairman, Mr. Ron Ash, is here tonight, and he wants to be able to say a few words, and certainly want to welcome him tonight.
Thank you, Michael. First of all, I want to reiterate what Michael said, that we greatly appreciate and thank y'all for coming tonight. We understand the frustrations that you have. We have them also, trust me. But there's only two things that I can tell you that we're sure of. Number one is that everybody, Mr. Davis and his entire staff, have been working on these situations diligently all summer. And the guidelines that they've been getting are not changing daily, they're changing hourly, because nobody knows the full effect. To say that these are uncertain times is an understatement. Okay? So we don't know what's going to happen next week, week after next, September, whatever. So I can tell you two things. They have put in a lot of hours trying to make sure that there is a very productive education system in place, and that your children will be as safe as humanly possible. There's no perfect system. There's a lot of questions that you're going to get a lot of information here tonight, and there's going to be a lot of questions that were Tuesday night. Very good questions. Okay, a lot of them Mr. Davis and staff could answer. Some of them we're still working on that. Okay, we know that this is a work in progress, and that's the only two things that I can tell you for sure tonight. And we greatly appreciate it. I can tell you that we're very much open to communication. The entire board, myself, and Michael and his staff will continue, and we'll get through this together. We'll all get through it one way or the other. We greatly appreciate it, and thank y'all for being here. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. If you, tonight's meeting again will be, we're recording, and this will be, not that you'll probably want to watch it again, but if you did, or you have friends or family that weren't able to attend tonight, it will be recorded on our district Facebook page, Hardin County Schools Facebook page, or our district website. It will be loaded tomorrow. The problem on Tuesday was we thought we'd have it loaded by noon, but the meeting lasted about an hour and a half, and our company that we work with on our internet and our web page, it was a file that was so huge it took most of the day to get it loaded, downloaded, so it was late afternoon before it got loaded, but it is on there now. So a lot of the questions you may have, you can go online and see that from Tuesday night if you haven't. I know there's, I think, a whole lot of folks that have viewed that meeting, but we're also recording this one tonight too, okay? So let's talk about where we are. As Mr. Ash said, I see a lot of familiar faces, and I appreciate you being here, and we will be here until you want to get all your questions answered. We're going to give you some information on the first part of the meeting, and then we're going to take questions for as long as you got them. I will stay until the last person leaves. Be glad to do that. Our high school administration staff is here. Our Hardin County Middle School administration staff is here. And Pickwick Southside, Miss Jennifer Burks is here. I've seen her somewhere. Our central office staff is here as well, and I want to recognize them real quick so you'll know who's here. Someone that I failed to mention Tuesday night that I'm probably going to be in trouble for, so I'm going to say her first tonight. Miss Teresa McCormick is our Federal Programs Director. Miss Mitzi Baker is our RTI Supervisor and Pre-K. And Miss Jennifer Copeland is our Special Ed Supervisor, and Mr. Ryan Miller is our Student Services Supervisor. He'll be talking to you about attendance, how attendance works with distance learning, and Mr. Greg Wyatt is our K-12 Academic Supervisor. He'll be talking to you about the academic side of it. So, distance learning. Obviously, you're interested, or you've either registered or you're interested in registering your child probably for distance learning. We do have two options for school. As we sit here tonight, we're looking at opening on time, August 3rd. As we sit here tonight, our traditional schedule, our approved calendar for school is August 3rd start. I have been putting out information. We're going to always be as transparent as we can be. That first week is modified. If you haven't seen the modification, how that schedule works, it's a grade per day for elementary and then middle school. I think on Monday it's 8th graders, on Tuesday, Wednesday, 7th graders come Tuesday, Wednesday, and 6th graders come Thursday, Friday. For high school, it's seniors on Monday, juniors on Tuesday, sophomores on Wednesday, and freshmen on Thursday, Friday. And then August 10th, everybody goes for the traditional schedule. For our distance learning option, if you go the distance learning option, you would actually, of course, let me back up and say tomorrow's the deadline to register for, if you haven't registered yet. We have to get everybody registered that's going the distance learning option. There's still a lot of scheduling to do. When we realized that we were going to offer this option, we had no idea how many students would want to go this option, or parents would want their child to go that option. I think as we sit here tonight, we're at about 540, right around 540 students.
571.
Okay, 571. We're at 571. Our school system has 3,500 students, roughly, right at 3,500, and right now we're right at about 571 students that are looking to go the distance learning route. So tomorrow is the deadline to apply, 4 o'clock, so encourage you to do that if that's the route you go. Now here's what I want you to remember. If you go the distance learning option and you start the distance learning option for school, it's going to be a minimum of a semester. So if you go that option, your child will stay in that option till at least December for the first semester. And then at the start of the second semester, if you wanted to change your mind and send your child to school, we start second semester on January the 5th. That's your option. We'd love to have them back in school, and that will be fine. If you want to continue the distance learning option from January until May, that would be your option as well. And it would be, again, for another minimum of a semester, and they would need to stay in there the entire semester. The other thing would be to remember, if you decide that you want to try the traditional schedule and you want to start school, and let's say you start school the traditional way, 1st of August, let's say you go 2 weeks and you just think it's not going right, you don't feel comfortable, you want to change your mind, you can always pull out and go distance learning. Okay? Make sure everybody understands. If you start traditional and you go to school, and even if you go the first week and you change your mind, you can opt out and go distance learning, okay? So that's an option to consider if you're not sure about what you're doing. But remember, once you start traditional, it's a minimum of a semester, okay? Distance learning, it's something I want you to know that most rural school systems have never really done. Hardin County Schools have never done this. It's going to be brand new. It's going to be brand new to us. But I pledge to you, we're going to work hard. We're going to make it work. We're going to get better at it every day. We've got some amazing, amazing teachers, dedicated teachers to make it work. Distance learning obviously needs to be at its best. To make it the best it can be, will need to be with a device, electronic device, iPad, laptop, some type of device that your student can work on. And wireless access internet at your home. If you don't have that, we can work with you with paper packets. So if you don't have a laptop or device that can connect to the internet and you don't have access to the internet, that doesn't mean you can't do distance learn. You can still do it, but it's going to be paper packets. Okay, that makes it a little bit tougher because you're not going to be able to have the opportunity to see a teacher online, communicate with teachers by email through the Google Classroom. We'll talk more about that in a minute. It will be basically, if you don't have the internet, it'll be basically a phone call and that sort of thing. So a little bit tougher, obviously, is think about trying to teach fractions over the phone. I mean, really, we have to think where we're going here. So, but back to the devices. So like most school systems, we've ordered devices. I think school systems across the entire country have ordered devices. We've been given CARES Act funds, which is federal funds. We've ordered 2,650 laptops. We tried to beat the rush. A new fiscal year starts July 1. We actually put our order in before that because we thought we'd beat the rush, but we were still told that it would be November before we get them. So, that being the case, parents are going to need a device for the first semester. If our laptops that we've ordered come in mid-November, you got to think about that's right around Thanksgiving. You got 2 or 3 weeks till Christmas, so realistically, we're probably not going to be able to get those out until 1st of January, second semester. So we should have, at that point, devices for everybody right now, grades 3 through 12, 2,650 devices. So if you don't have them first semester, you can have them second semester if you're, obviously this is grades 6 through 12, if you're here tonight probably. So that could still be an option. Maybe you have to do paper packets first semester, okay? There's some key words that I want you to know that will have to be in our vocabulary to make distance learning work. Because it's new to us, it'll be new to you. And here's the thing, myself, along with the central office staff, along with all the teachers, all the administration, we want what you want. We want the very best for your child. It's our job to prepare them for whatever they want to do after school, after they get out of high school, whether it be a career or to continue their education in a junior college or a 4-year college. So we're all in this together. So key words to me to make this work, because we're in uncharted water in this distance learning, is cooperation, patience, and willingness to work together. If we can't do that, it's not going to work. Teachers are going to, you got to keep in mind, are going to have a classroom full of kids. Still, the numbers are going to be lower because we've got a lot of kids that are going distance learning, but they're still going to have kids responsible in the classrooms, plus the distance learning. So I ask you now to keep our teachers in your prayers. It's going to be an unbelievable year for our teachers. But if there's ever a group of folks that can roll their sleeves up and do it, it's teachers. And I am very proud of our teachers. So just, again, keep them in your prayers. Again, we talked about the devices. We've ordered 2,650. We've talked about that. Here's some other important things I want you to keep in mind on distance learning. It's going to require much more help and support from you. I know that many of you are working. You know, you got to think about the decision that I faced to try to, whether or not to call school off. I know parents have got to work and make a living. So the decision is always so hard whether or not to call school off, because I know everybody doesn't have access to child care. And we've got 3,500 students, so if you're talking about calling school off for a week or 2 at a time, I know what kind of bind that puts parents in. I know that we worry about kids getting food for that time. So there's a lot of decisions on that we've got to think about. It's not just as easy as calling it off and not worrying about it, because that's not the case. So distance learn will require much more work for either you or whoever's going to be home with your children. Now your children obviously are older than the ones that we met with on Tuesday, so I'm assuming high school kids obviously are more responsible. Middle school, they're thinking they're more responsible. They're getting there. My favorite group is middle school. I was principal here. I love them. So, but you know, middle school, high school, there's got to be some more responsibility on them, and rightly so. But still, going to have to be some more help and support from the parents to make it work. What I want you to know for sure is when we called school off in March last year, never forget it as long as I live, sitting in my office, and when we called school off on the 16th, I thought maybe it would be for the rest of that week, maybe 2 weeks, and lo and behold, we never went back. We still hadn't gone back, and we went out the whole rest of the semester. The state, really, we were all hit blindsided by it. State didn't really pressure because of the timing of the year and school was almost out. There wasn't really a whole lot of accountability at that point on school districts because everybody just was hit blindsided by it and we weren't ready. That's not the case now. There's going to be a lot more accountability. If school has to be called off because of the COVID pandemic, then we've got to continue school and distance learning. We've got to keep going. We can't not keep going with kids not learning and not being prepared. We're going to catch them up on the 3 months that we've been out. We know there's learning gaps to be caught up. We can do that, but we can't go another 3, 4, 5, 6 months and not be engaged in learning and reading. And we're going to be focusing on reading and math, really the first semester for our kids. We're going to do some science and social studies. They'll talk more about that in a minute, but we really got to focus on reading and math and hit our learning gaps on our students. Now, all students may not have the learning gaps that some do, but we will do some enrichment for them. So we will continue to work on that. I've talked to you about the staying in the distance learning option. Keep that in mind about it being a minimum for the semester. Keep in mind also, and I've put this out there, I just wanted to share it with you, students in distance learning may still participate in school curricular activities in school. For instance, for middle school, high school, that would be sports that are after school. And I think if you had specific questions on that, band, football, basketball, those sort of things, any extracurricular activities, you would be able to still participate in those if you go the distance learning route. Now, the thing to keep in mind there is the attendance and grades, and obviously behavior wouldn't be an issue for us because you've got them at home on behavior. It may be an issue for you. You may say you're not going today because you're not behaving at home. But grades and attendance for us would kick in on distance learning as far as participating in extracurricular. Breakfast and lunches is still always a big concern when we're not in school. You will have access to breakfast and lunches for free. We still continue to be enrolled in the community eligibility program, so all our kids still eat free breakfast, free lunch. There will be a plan for if you go distance learn to still get your child's free breakfast, free lunch. I think what we're looking at now, the plan will be, and this will be communicated soon, but on Mondays about midday, we'll have them ready, and I think they're working on a way to you to be able to send you a form out electronically, and you put down what you want for the week for your child, and on Mondays about midday, somewhere around the 10 o'clock mark, you'll have to go to the school and pick your food up for your child. It'll be for that entire week. So that's a good thing. Those of you that have the ability to do that or have someone come get it for your child, we'll work that out. But that'll be food for the entire week for your child if you're doing distance learning, breakfast and lunch. I'm going to pause here a second and let Mr. White come and talk about a little bit of the academic side of it. And then I'll circle back in just a minute. After Mr. White goes, Mr. Ryan Miller will go and talk just a minute about attendance. And then what we want to do is quit talking and give you an opportunity to ask questions. A lot of times we learn more when you ask questions and we try to answer them, and then we'll go from there. Okay? Mr. White.
Like Mr. Davis said, this is uncharted waters for all of us, but what we're trying to do is to come up with the best plan that we can. But we want you to understand before we start is the distance learning at the elementary level is going to probably look different than it is at the middle school level, and the middle school level is going to look different than it is at the high school level because with the way that we're doing things. But we're going to try to stay with the same concept in that when a student is logging in or whatever that they're using, whether it's paper package, we're going to stay consistent across the board. We're going to try to stay our pacing and our sequence has got to stay the same because what we're thinking is, or well, what we know is probably going to happen, there's a possibility that kids could have to go home out of a regular classroom and they need to be able to have the access to it too. So they're going to actually become distance learners as well. So that's why it's going to be very important that everybody stays at the same sequence, so that if I went home in week 10 for some reason, I could get on the website and I could start my week 10 from home just like I would be if I was at school. So that's the kind of the concept that we're going. But the first thing I just wanted you to look at is to look at some comparisons between a traditional classroom and what we would consider our distance learning. You know, it's pretty much the same. You're going to have access to the Tennessee state standards, whether I'm doing it where I'm in the classroom or if I'm on distance learning, because we're going to make sure that you're going to have access to the same thing. Every lesson you have is going to be the same thing. It's going to have reference to the Tennessee state standards. It's going to be the same thing that the person in the traditional classroom is doing that day as well. So keep that in mind. Also, you're going to have access to high quality instructional materials. Every textbook that we have in our math, science, social studies, ELA is going to be on the web. It's going to be on your program. So you're going to have access to all of the textbooks. So anytime that the teacher's making reference, anything that you need, you're going to be able to log in and you're going to be able to get into the textbooks that we're using. And a lot of it's going to be referenced. There's going to be links and everything that you can go to get everything you need. And we're going to have to train you to show you how to get to everything. When you look at the difference between the traditional and distance, in the traditional classroom, you're going to have daily access to a certified teacher. In other words, you're going to be in that classroom, you're going to have daily access to them, they're going to be there, you're going to have them because you're going to be in front of them. Distance learning, the difference is you're going to have probably weekly access for sure, not guaranteed that you're going to have access of physical, being able to look at them every single day. Okay, because there's a possibility that, with the way things are set up, with your internet or whatever that you're using, your device could go down. How internet service around here is, we're not guaranteed that you're going to be able to see that teacher. They could have a video of that lesson that day. They could Zoom you that day. So just to let you know that you're not going to actually be looking in the classroom as that teacher is teaching to the kids that are in the traditional classroom. Yours are going to be some type of a taped lesson, and it might not even be of that teacher. It could possibly be of another teacher somewhere else that does a really good job of explaining what they're wanting that to happen. So keep that in mind, the difference between the two. All right? So the next thing is attendance is recorded. You are going to have to be able to be accountable for attendance. We are. That's one of the things that we have to put in our continuity of learning plan is the actual attendance. So we were talking to some of the people that are helping us in our own district, and there's going to be times your students are going to have to log on. There's a possibility the teachers are going to have at 8:30 in the morning, if that's when you're supposed to be having math class, that they may have some type of an activity just to let them know that, hey, I'm logging on and I'm doing some work. It may just be to send a hello, and that way we know what the attendance is. So there's going to be some things that you're going to have to do, and there's going to be some schedules out there that are saying this is the time that your child needs to be logging on, because we've got to have some kind of way of finding attendance for our students. And that's not just Hardin County's policy, that's the state of Tennessee's that they're putting on us to look for attendance. Instructional day, 6.5 hours, but we're on 7 hours because of we have stockpile days. We go that extra time. So we're looking at a 7-hour instructional day. Now this is what you are not to be in front of a computer. It doesn't mean you have to be sitting in front of a computer for 7 hours. There's going to be a schedule that's going to come out to show you what is recommended. Like if I'm in a regular traditional classroom, I may be in a ELA class and we may spend the first 20-25 minutes doing some type of a grammar, and then we may do some type of a reading where the teacher wants us to read. Well, that would be spelled out into your schedule. It may say, for 20 minutes you do this, 20 minutes you do a read, and then there could be a video lesson. So you're not going to be actually sitting down in front of a computer for 6.5 hours. There's going to be breaks in there. There's going to be your related arts in there. There's going to be time for you to do recess in there. There's also going to be time that if you have to do some remediation, that's going to be built in there. So your schedule is going to fit what you have to do in there, but there's going to have to be ways that we can check that you are in and that we're seeing work that's being accomplished by the students. So there is gonna be some accountability. So that's why Mr. Davis told you earlier, there's more accountability that's gonna be placed on you as a parent as much as it is on the students, because it's gonna be your responsibility to make sure that they're staying there, because you're there with them. And also, when it comes down to the work that these students are doing, you've got to make sure that they're on top of it. There's going to be quizzes they have to take, tests they have to take. So you're going to have to be there on top of them to make sure that they're doing it. Benchmark testing is required. So whatever testing that we're requiring here in the school, you're going to be required to do that as well. So any type of benchmarking. And here we do a lot of benchmarking at the 9 weeks or at Christmas and in the spring. You're going to be required to do those. So a benchmarking for those types of things, we can make sure that you have access to it online or by paper. We may have to send it. The next thing is there is a good possibility that you may have to come into the school to do some easy CBM testing or some type of a testing that we have to do, but we would schedule a time for you to come into the building for you to do some testing that we have to do here, that we can't do that at home with you. Okay, so make sure that that is a possibility, but we would set some times up and call you and say, hey, we need you to come in, here's your appointment time, bring your child in so we can get this testing done. Also, state testing is required, so you will have to come in when we get to the end of the year. If we test, if they do the TCAPs or the 10 ready, you will have to come into the school to do those because of security reasons and the accountability. You will have to come into the school to take those tests. You will not be allowed to take those at home. So keep that in mind. We'll have to schedule it up. You'll have to get that scheduled when those days when it comes. We have a short window that has to be done in. So make sure that you know that we'll have to do that. Instructional delivery. If I'm in front of a teacher, I'm always going to have the teacher lecture, digital. I'm going to have that teacher in front of me, just like it says. But if I am in distance, I may have a digital or some type of a camera, or I could be doing it by phone. And that's not the best way. If I have to do a packet, if I'm, like Mr. Davis said, if I'm having to explain to you how to do fractions over the phone, that's not a good method. Okay, so if you don't have means and we're doing the packets, that's not the best way to do it. But what they're telling us is we have to provide initial instruction for anybody that has a paper packet. So the paper packet is just reinforcement. You didn't get the initial instruction. So the only way, if you're getting packets, that's telling us you don't have a device, and the only way that I can do that for you is, I guess, a telephone is the only way if you don't have a device. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about it. Also underneath distance, you're going to hear this word a lot, asynchronous and synchronous learning. Asynchronous is the students and faculty are not required to be online at the same time. You're going to have a lot of that. So a lot of your work on distance learning is you're not going to have that interaction with the teacher. You are going to have some. A teacher can have a Zoom meeting. They can set things up to where your students can log in and they can actually see that teacher. But they don't have to be that way all the time. If they're going to be that way where they're actually talking back and forth, that's more like a synchronous learning where they are required to be present at the same time. So you're going to have a combination, but most of our distance learning is going to be in the asynchronous type format, is what you're going to see, where they're not going to be required to be online at the same time. And the last thing is everybody has to adhere to all the Hardin County Board grading policies, but not only that, you have to adhere to all Hardin County School Board policies, whether I'm distance learning or I'm in a traditional. Everything has to be followed exactly the same way because you're still registered as a student in the Hardin County school system. So you have to adhere to that. So that's just taking it and looking at the two side by side. So you can see whether I'm in a classroom or whether I'm distance learning, you can see the format of the two. Now, what I was going to try to show you next is just to try to give you a glimpse of what something, and this is just a basic template that we could what a lesson might look like if I were to log in. And this is going to be blank, and in a minute I'll show you one that is completed. But basically, you would end up with, I would log in and I would see this at a middle school or high school, and it would start out with, this is your daily lesson. It would have a teacher's name and whatever the title is. And then an agenda would pop up and tell you what you're going to accomplish that day. This is kind of the format we're trying to stay consistent across the board. List the objectives that you want to do, what your success for that's going to be, and some type of an essential questions. If it's more of an ELA, you're going to have the essential questions. And then they're going to give you a chart there that'll tell you what your week looks like, what's expected of you for the week, and what kind of work you're going to get completed for that week. So that would be laid out, and there's other things they can put in there, but this is, like I say, the basic format that you're going to see when you log in. This is just an example, and there's just an example of it. Then they're going to have a review for you, trying to find out, maybe some prior learning, some things that's happened, in the past, just to try to, things you're going to need for the upcoming lesson. We're going to have a review. Then they're going to introduce the lesson to you. And this is going to look a lot of different ways, and you're going to see an example of it in a minute. And then there's going to be a lot of modeling by the teacher. It's kind of like the teacher's going to do some things for you, show you what they expect out of you. And this was a place where we had an actual video in here of modeling. And then there's going to be practice together. There's going to be some things that the teacher and the student can practice together. And then they're going to have some things for the students to do on their own. It's going to be your turn. And then how do you apply that? So it's some kind of task. Well, how does all of this come back together? Everything they did that day, how does it all come back together? So you'll have the task, and then always a closure. How do you feel about what you did today on everything that we're doing? This is a place sort of like feedback that we can get from everybody, and then an exit ticket. So you're going to see that. And then you'll look at what's ahead. Okay, so that's kind of just the basic format of what you're going to see in the distance learning. Okay, now I'm going to show you an example of one that we had for one of our elementaries that we're working on. So this is an individual teacher's that they've created, but what yours would more likely would look something like this. If you're elementary, there are a lot more arts and crafts, and probably middle school might, high school teachers might not put anything like all of this arts and crafts stuff on here. It might be a little bit plainer, but this is for 5th grade elementary. But what we would have, instead of saying Miss Katrina's virtual classroom, it would say more like Hardin County 5th grade ELA. That's what it would look like. And inside of this, there's a lot of different things you can go to. You can click on things here. Like up here, I could click in this box. There's a lot of things you can click on. And I just know because I've been working with it, this would click and take me to all the standards. Everything in this bookshelf, if I click on it, it's going to take me to textbooks that my kids can read. So it would be a link. They would just put their cursor over the book, and it would take them to a YouTube or somewhere or a link, and they could read that book. And then over here, there's just some extra, like iExcel. It's a program that they can do some work in iExcel. And then there's just a little arts and crafts here with the pens. Just because I know I've played around with it, that if I clicked on it, those things would work. Okay, so you're going to have that. So there's going to be interactive things on the website that kids are going to be asked to do. Then here again, this is just to keep up with your work. Day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Check off each day that you've done your work. It's just, to make you accountable for it. And there's your weekly work by the ELA teacher. Monday, this is what they're going to do. And then there's the assignments. And then day 1, there's all of our objectives. Day 2, or still day 1, That's going to be things that they can do. Now, for you, like when they're doing this, there's going to be actual assignments that teachers could have that you may click on the assignment and it may take you over to a Google Classroom where you can actually do some work, then you would submit it and then for a grade. So a lot of this you're going to have to work. You do it, you submit it, and it gets graded. So I'm just showing you just a basic form of when you're flipping through what it's going to look like. And there's some things that's been filled in. There's an example of a read, looking at a book cover, asking you to write. You'll be able to write in it. And there's an example of a model. I told you what the teacher would model. It was given their stuff, what they read, asking the kids to write. And here, she put a clock in here, asking the students to go read on their own for 15 minutes. A book at home, or go back to her front page, pick one of those books. So, and it's all built in. And your turn to write. And then here is a grammar lesson. And if you'll click down here, well, I'll go back one. Down here, if I clicked on that, that would actually take me to a YouTube video that actually showed that grammar lesson. The teacher teaching that lesson. So that's kind of the things you're going to see as a whole in the programs. Okay, I'm just giving you a glimpse of what it could look like when you're going through. So there's a lot of work, but a lot of the things, and that's why you can't get behind. So you're going to have to stay on top of it and get behind with the assessments. Now, the way this works is everything's going to be in what we call Google Classroom. So everything will be in that. Your child will have a Google account. They'll have an account. They'll log in to their account. They'll have to have a username, password. They'll get in, and their work will be assigned to them. And they'll say week 1, day 1. They'll go. They'll have assignments. They'll complete them, and that work will be submitted back to the teacher for grading. And they'll grade it, and they'll send it back to you for your feedback. And everything will be connected back to our student information system, which goes into the grading, which will go automatically into the portal, just like you get a report card, just like our teachers, when they put grades in their classroom, this is going to go into the same way, but it's going to go through the Google Classroom. So that's just a quick example, and great job, you finished day 1. But it is very, very important to know that we have to stay on top of it and not get behind with all the work. There's a lot of work, and the teachers are going to put in. It's just like you're in regular school day. There's no difference. And so all the assignments, teachers can put start times and end times, start dates and end dates for these assignments, just like you're in school. So we want you to understand. Now, I'm just being as honest as I can with you. Nothing substitutes your child being in front of a teacher when it comes to academics. I'm being as honest as I can. I can't make the decision for you on the health of your child. That's your decision. But if you're asking me what is best for your child, is to be in front of the teacher as much as you can, especially at our younger age. It's hard for me to imagine that a kindergartner or a first grade kid can't be in front of the teacher when they're trying to learn how to read. But they're having to do it through a video or a computer rather than being in front of that teacher. So please keep that in mind, but also keep in mind we know the health of your child is there, and know that we're going to do everything we can for the kids that are in this school building to take care of those children and do the best we can. And we've spent tons of money buying everything we possibly could think of for to keep everybody safe. But I understand you want to do what's best for your child, but also think about the education and what the commitment that it's going to take to do distance learning, because you can't fall back, especially the commitment of staying till January. And if you get behind and things kind of go downhill, and then all of a sudden you come back in January and you really hadn't done a lot of schoolwork since last March, and we get behind all the way to January, it's almost like we've lost a whole school year. So just think about the commitment that it's going to take from your children and from you as adults. So, Mr. Miller.
Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna talk to you just a minute about attendance and what that's gonna look like, the best I can. We know that this is gonna look different for 4 different situations. We wanna use common sense, but we've also gotta have accountability. So let me just give you a little bit of an idea. If you are gonna have access to a device in Google Classroom, the teacher will be able to monitor logging in, and that's a good thing. And also, so I would say you log in and you do your work, you're present that day, okay? So there is a big piece of the attendance part that is that's gonna be, the work completed is gonna be looked at. It's gonna play a major role in if that student was there or not, okay? So logging in out on Google Classroom if you have that access. If you don't, we will have someone at the school, probably the teacher, all those decisions haven't been made yet. Someone at the school will communicate with you or your child. If it's a high school student, it may be the student. Are you working today? Yes. Okay, but if there's no work completed, just saying yes, y'all see what I mean? If there's no work completed, then you really weren't present. So I would say this, the time commitment that Mr. White was talking about is important as far as the time spent. The completed work part of it is going to be a big part of it too. I don't know if I can say 50% and 50%, but they'll both play a major role. So if it's determined that your student is not making progress, you'll get a call from the administration at the school, what's going on, and it's not a gotcha or anything like that. We will truly try to figure out what's going on, okay, and see what we can do to help. I will say that the truancy laws are still in play. Our school board policies are still, you got to comply by them. If you look at, y'all may want to jot this down. I'm not going to pull it up, but it's board policy 6.2002. That's what defines excused and unexcused absences. So if your child misses a day, the way to keep it from being excused is to either have a doctor's note or you have 3 call-ins a semester. So a lot of you've been in this system a long time. It's no different. Again, truancy, you can look at board policy 6.200. That policy will govern truancy for remote learners just like it does for those that are in the brick and mortar school. I guess the last thing I'll say is, I'll try to maybe address a couple things that you're thinking that were asked last night. Of course, or Tuesday night, we were talking to elementary parents. So yours will be a little different because a high school student may be at home working on this by themselves one day. I mean, that's the way mine would be if she has to go home, or my 7th grader, she may be at home working. The question came up though as, let's say that you're having to help your child a lot and you have to work. What if you can't log on until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock in the afternoon? If they get their work done, it's going to be counted as a present day. What if you work on the weekends, or work all week and want to do some work on the weekends? Get the job done. Get it done on the weekends. So the time has got to be spent, and the work has got to be done. We are going to use, and I've heard Mr. Davis say it once, I've heard him say it 1,000,000 times. We are going to use common sense, but there's accountability as well. And what he said at the beginning is very true. We need to work together. We need to communicate with each other. And as long as that happens, things will go fine on the attendance end. Okay? I'm always, my door's always open. You can call me at the central office if you ever have any concerns or issues. If you have any attendance issues, if you do go this route and there's some things that come up, I would first tell you to call the school and communicate, emails, phone calls. But if it's something that you need me for, I'll be happy to talk to you about it, okay? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller, thank you, Mr. White. Ms. McCormick said I said something that wasn't accurate, so let me back up and tell you what I must have been crazy. If you go traditional, if you go the traditional schedule, you're not locked in for a semester. Let me just lay this out one more quick time before we start with questions. If you go traditional, if you start traditional and you want to send your child to school, once you do that, anytime after that, if it's a day or two, if it's a week, if it's 2 weeks, if it's a month, you can always pull out and go distance learn, okay? If you go distance learn from the start, that's a minimum of a semester, okay? And then you can always change your mind if you want to and come back January 5th on the start of the second semester. Mr. Miller just stole what I was fixing to say. We're going to use common sense. We're going to work together. We're all in this together. Yes, distance learning is new. It is more flexible for the students to be at home. There will be times that they will have to be available because teachers have planning periods. But yes, it may not be that they have to get up at 8 o'clock and start. It may be they start at 10, if that's the case. It's going to be different for different students depending on the teachers that they're assigned to. So, but distance learning obviously is more flexible. So, again, we're going to work with you our very best. End of the day, it's the students that matter, and we're all in this together. So, if you have questions about distance learn, which you probably do, or if you have questions about traditional schedule, what we're doing with traditional, if you're still thinking about not knowing what you're going to do, now's the time. Let's take questions. Yes, sir.
I got one good question.
Yes, sir.
Is it required to wear masks?
Masks at this point, today, are going to be recommended and not required. Now, the call that we were on yesterday with the regional health office says, and Mr. Wilkerson and I have talked, we're going to strongly encourage at this point, unless we get further guidance, for our high school students to wear a mask when they change classes in the hallways. Our middle school and elementary students, one of the modifications we're doing, they won't be swapping classes like normal. Normally grades 3 through 8 change classes for academic classes. They won't be doing that for the unforeseeable future through this. They will stay in the same classroom. They will have assigned seats. That's going to be a key component to this so that we know where they're sitting and who they're sitting by so that we can track that. But teachers will rotate amongst the teams here at the middle school and elementary school. So currently now, it is recommended but not required. Yes, sir. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
How would that relate to the teachers wearing masks?
The school system has ordered, I don't know, I can't tell you the number of masks that we've ordered. I know there's going to be parents that are going to want their children to wear masks at school, so if a child forgets their mask and they go to the office or their teacher, we will have masks at school. Teachers, we feel like, will have a hard time teaching with a mask on all day. Some are going to want to wear those, which is perfectly fine, but we bought 500 face shields, like a welder's mask with a clear shield. I think it's going to be much easier for our teachers to wear those. Our younger students need to see the teacher's mouth on the reading and learn, but just throughout the day to be able to teach, we sent an email out and polled our teachers, and I think the majority of them and our support staff preferred the shield, and so they should actually arrive here tomorrow. All of our supplies either tomorrow or Monday will be here, so we've got 500 of those, so we will have enough for our entire staff.
So will they be required to wear it?
At this point, it'll be recommended but not required. But that could change.
Got one up top.
Yes, ma'am.
If someone tests positive in the school, what happens with the other kids in that classroom?
It's a really good question. Yesterday's call was with all the directors in West Tennessee It was from the regional health office in Jackson. And basically it also involved the health departments in the local counties. So basically what I understood on the call, and let me say this, we have a meeting tomorrow. All of our schools have a school nurse, y'all. I think everybody, some of our school nurses are here, and I appreciate that. Every one of our schools, we're very blessed to have a school nurse in. We also have a school resource officer, and I appreciate Deputy Hal for being here somewhere, or he was here. So thank you for that. But what we will do is, my understanding is, back to why we got to have seating charts in elementary, middle. High school's a whole different issue here because they have to change classes. They're depending on their schedules and things. Middle school and elementary will have, they won't change classes. They'll have assigned seats. Our understanding from yesterday was that if we are notified, if let's say student A has a confirmed case, we will know student A is sitting here, and wherever they are tested, Ms. Phyllis, you make sure I'm telling this correct, because she's sitting back there and she was on the call with me yesterday. Student A will be tested. No matter where he's tested, they report that to our local health department. They have to. It reports immediately to Jackson. Jackson, in turn, we're going to know who this is, so we can, in turn, they're going to notify the student. They're going to call the student that's been confirmed case, so they'll know exactly who they're within 6 foot from, you know, so they have to be notified, and those folks have to be quarantined. My understanding is right now, and we haven't set our protocol yet. We're going to meet tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I have local health officials. I have our school nurse coming. We're going to work through our protocols, and we're going to put this information out. But the guidance I'm understanding right now is do everything you can not to cancel the entire school, but to cancel possibly that particular classroom if you have to. Give time to disinfect, clean. And we'd have extra measures for that. We've bought disinfectant, like leaf blower guns that will come in at the end of the day when all the kids are gone and disinfect all the rooms every day. We bought a ton of hand sanitizers. We bought disinfectant sprays. All teachers will have that. Our cleaning company will do extra cleaning on that. So there's going to be procedures and protocols in place. We will communicate that once we get through the meeting, but that's my understanding of the guidance right now to keep it safe, but try not to cancel the entire school if it's limited to one classroom. High school is a different issue. We're going to have to work through that and get some more guidance on that. What I understood them to say yesterday was they will continue to give us guidance. You know, we're educators. We're not in the health field, so we've got this issue's big enough. We've got to have some help and guidance on this from them. They assured us that they will continue to guide us and give us guidance on when they think we really need to consider closing a school or an entire school system. And I was glad to hear that because we need that guidance. Yes, ma'am. Students that are doing packets will have access to school books. Yes, ma'am.
Where I live, I don't get phone service, so we don't have internet access either. And you guys said that we would be contacting to check up on the students, see how they were doing. How would you contact us?
We're probably down to the mail service.
Probably on pickup and delivery of the package.
Yeah, the packet, if we go packets, which that's going to be an option for several folks. I mean, packets are just going to have to work for some folks. Parents are going to have to bring, they'll be worked out with the school. There'll be a designated day, and I'm just going to throw this out as an example. Mondays may be the day that you have to come in and get the packets and turn the packets in from the previous week. So then you can communicate then while you're there in one trip, get the food, all in one trip. So you're not just back and forth throughout the day. But, you know, if we don't have internet, we don't have a phone, then we're probably using the mail service or we're doing it on the day we come get the packets. That's a good question. I hadn't had that asked yet, so you about to stump me on that. I'm going to call on you even though I have to deal with you every day. This is Mr. Kelly Jordan from the Courier, so this ought to be a good one.
Yeah. Well, 2 But from the very beginning, once they decide to withdraw and go distance, then they're locked in for the rest of that semester, correct?
So what you're saying is if they go traditional and change their mind, no matter when it is in the semester, and pull out and go distance learning, they're locked in, they're locked into the end of the
They can't start
semester.
traditional, say, well, we're gonna take 2 weeks off and do distance, and then come back before the end of the semester. Once you're going distance, you're going distance for the rest of the semester.
That is correct, for the semester, correct.
The second question I have is,
Go ahead, I'll hear you from there.
second question is, did they discuss protocols for students that just present with symptoms and either don't want to get tested, their parents refuse to have them tested, or they get tested and it takes 12 days to get the test results back like that? That is true.
We checked in today, Mr. Miller's our in-house legal counsel. My understanding is we can't force a child to get tested. That's my understanding. So far, that's what we found out. Ms. Phyllis, you may have to help me here. The question is, a child that has not got a confirmed case but was sent home with COVID-like symptoms, my understanding was we carry on, nobody's quarantined at that point, nobody's notified, school doesn't notify anybody anyway, it has to be the,
But the health department said the student will be absent 14 days.
if they're sent home with, okay.
Yes, and they want them.
But there's no quarantine for anybody else.
No,
Okay.
and they want that child to be quarantined, but there's no, we can't make a parent keep their child at home. We can say don't bring them to school, but we can't keep them in the house, if that's what the health department will say.
Here's one thing they did say that made me think of that. Health departments, the regional health says you can't test your way out of a 14-day quarantine. So if you start testing and you're quarantined 14 days and you test it day 3, day 4, day 5, and you're negative, you doesn't matter. You've got to do the full 14-day quarantine before you can even think about coming back. So that's good to know if I'm a parent and I've got a child. I've got a child myself in school. So they can't test. You can't test your way out just because it's negative. It's got to be the full 14-day quarantine. Yes, ma'am.
I'll
I'll get you next.
I have two questions. First, because of the amount of people that are being tested, I know that it's taking longer to get results back. So if my child was exposed, the incubation period, they say somewhere between 5 and 8 days. We wait those days, get tested, and then we have an additional 2 weeks before we actually get a result back. What do you do in that period of time?
We got to do some distance learning because that's too long for them to be out of school and not do some learning. We're going to work with you on that. We've got to keep things going there. That's to think that they're going to come back if they've been out that long. It's going to be a lot of work to do. So the school system's going to have to be ready again on a day's notice to switch gears to distance learning if we have to call the entire school system off. So again, new territory for us. We're going to get better at it every day we go. But it's going to be a little rough at the start, but we're going to be flexible. I hope you'll continue to remember to be flexible. We're going to work together, but we got to be ready on a minute's notice for those kind of circumstances to switch gears.
Mr. Davis, on that same question
Question.
you heard, that's the reason why we want our distance learners and our regular teachers to stay in the same sequence. For that situation, if we had a child in the school that was exposed, but that long testing, that they could actually go home and log into the distance site and keep doing their work at home because the teacher has access to it too, and they wouldn't miss any instruction while they're out those days because they could be using it as their home, and that would take care of that 12, 14, 16, 20 day, whatever that time frame is that they had to be out because of the quarantine. That's the reason that we want to make sure that both people are staying on the same pace.
Okay.
You got another question?
My second question is it better to have a laptop computer or is it better to have something like a tablet device?
I asked our IT supervisor, and he basically told me, to his understanding, a device that you have that has a browser that gets you to the internet is really what you need. So, I probably would say a laptop, but a tablet will probably work as long as it's got the browser to get you to the internet. Okay, yes, ma'am.
We can't hear we don't know what the question is.
I'm sorry, I will say those questions. Appreciate you letting me know.
I think you kind of already answered what I was gonna say. In the past, though, even excused absences past a certain amount have counted against you. But that's still be the case, but you'll just substitute with distance learning so that won't count against them for absences?
Absences will stay just like they are for traditional students. You'll have to call in. If you have to take them to the doctor, if you're distance learning, you'll have 3 call-ins, or you'll have to do the doctor's statement. You have to do them just like we do if they're in traditional. We're gonna use common sense. We're gonna work with you, but we are accountable for every child in our school system's attendance. Now, here's the thing. We want you to keep your child in our school system. There's three options you've got. Traditional schedule to send them to school, go distance learning, keep them in our school system. Both those options are free. We work with you, we provide materials, we provide you a certified teacher. But if those 2 options were not to work, which I hope they do, one of them, you can still do the parental homeschool where you take full responsibility and none of this applies to you. But we don't want you to do that. We want you to be a part of our school system, and we want to work with you. But keep in mind, that could be an option. We don't want that for you. Attendance wouldn't be an option for you that way, but let's don't even talk about that. But
Just to clarify, if the child started traditional and there was the quarantine issues, so they were exposed, whatever, and they were at home, obviously that's gonna add up to more than 15 excused absences very quickly. But what I'm saying is.
those would not be
if they go
absences.
home-
Those would be excused if they're quarantined.
Those are not absences.
Those wouldn't be
They're
absences.
not gonna count, okay, that's where I'm going, because excused
not
absences, even in the past, have still counted.
What you gotta worry about is unexcused.
There's a new attendance.
Come over here where they can hear you.
That's a good question. There's a new attendance code. You know, everything's coded. There's like 88 of them, it seems like. But one is for distance learning. So that's what we would use in those situations. It would be a present
As long
day.
as they were home doing their
Yeah.
work and getting their stuff done, it would not count against them as an absence.
Yeah, I think it's a D, which would make sense. I think the D code is distance learning.
Yes.
How does like the testing work with getting to the school and stuff?
How does the testing work like getting into the school? Though, when you have to come to the school for a test to take, that would be scheduled. So either you will be working directly with your teacher and they would schedule that time. Those type of information will come directly from your school, and they will schedule a time. So you just won't have to just walk up and unannounced come in. They will schedule that time for you to come take that test. And you would not have to go to a classroom full of students. It would be in an area where you would just take it probably just by yourself, or in an area where it's very few in there.
Okay, and one more thing.
Yes, sir.
I think there's a bunch of gum under the table.
We will work on that. He told me there was gum under the table. We're gonna work on that. And see, there's some people breaking the rules. They're not supposed to have gum in here. You gotta love kids. All right, yes, ma'am.
Okay, for special needs kids, if they require speech and OT and they go to distance learning, are they still allowed to come into the school to have their speech and OT?
Miss Copeland is saying yes,
Okay,
and she's the supervisor of that. And if she says yes, it's a yes.
thank you. I'll coordinate that.
Yes, ma'am. Distance learning compatible with Apple products. As far as I know, Mr. Billender says yes. He's the IT guy, so he says yes, as long as you have the browser. Yes, sir.
Okay, the governor's state of emergency doesn't end till August 29th.
Correct.
So we're going back to school August 3rd. You're asking us now to make a decision about sending them to school when we don't know what's gonna happen,
Right,
because it's getting worse out there every day.
right.
And that's my concern. What if we do send them August 3rd? And in between that, it does get bad and a bunch of our children get sick.
Right.
Is August the 3rd a dead set date, or are you still working with the governor and DID and the school system to monitor that and decide if we may need to extend that date?
Good question. His question is, under the governor's new order, state of emergency or whatever he's put it in, it's through the end of August. when that first came out, we're thinking, oh my gosh, everybody, you know, I talked to a lot of the other directors in West Tennessee that are similar to our system. I mean, I don't talk to Shelby County because they're not comparable to us. I'm talking Chester, Henderson, Hardin, some of those. The very next day, when all that conversation got going, the governor put, the education commissioner put a memo out that his order had no bearing on schools. So that's kind of hard to believe, but it had no bearing on the start of schools. The state wants schools to open. They want schools to open. I mean, I get it. We have a July 24th date. I say we, all school systems in Tennessee have a July 24th deadline to submit a continuous learning plan. We've applied. You have the school districts have the option to apply for a waiver. It's 8 sections long. It has to be your plan to reopen. So our plan is to open August 3rd. It could change tomorrow. It could change next week, depending on how things go. I don't suspect we're going to hear from the governor saying not to open. He's going to leave it up to individual districts. From what I can gather right now, districts are, they're different in different districts how it's going. So if he steps in and says something, certainly we're going to follow his lead on that. I mean, we're certainly open to any guidance on this that we can, but right now our plan is to open on the 3rd. I will tell you this, one of the things that they say to have ready would be a plan if you have to possibly look at what you hear the term a lot of hybrid model for if they say to go to a 50% capacity in your building. So we're working on that as well. One of the models that we've kind of focused in on, you got to think about if you have to go 50% capacity. I think from the ones I've talked to, and which is I try to poll people when I see them at Walmart or Lowe's or wherever I go, grocery store. I know as a parent it would be hard. I think harder if you go, 2 days this week, 3 days this week, 2, 1, 3 off, or which way. I think it's going to be hard to get childcare lined up. It's going to be hard for parents to keep up what week I'm going 2 or 3 and all that. We would probably look at a week on, week off, so that you can ease your scheduled childcare, be able to get your food easier that way and figure that out and get assignments for a week at a time. So that could possibly be the hybrid model that we're looking at if we have to go that route. We're just in uncharted water. We're going to continue to work hard. We're burning the midnight oil on this, I promise. But today, our plan is to open the 3rd. We knew we needed to offer. There's some systems that aren't offering distance learning. They're saying our doors are open, you got to come. So we didn't feel comfortable doing that. I know there is valid reasons, and I've talked to, I can't tell you how many parents I've talked to that have, it may not necessarily be the child that has health issues, some do, but it's the grandmother or grandfather that lives in the home with them, it's the aunt and the uncle that does have health issues, and they're worried about their child coming back from school and bringing it to them, and I get that, I understand, and that's why we wanted to give the option. We want to bring our kids back and get to know them again and check on them socially and emotionally, and we want to get to know them again, but we don't know them as well as you know your own children, and you know whether or not all the circumstances at home, whether or not they really need to come back yet or not. So we're going to work with you, but there's just so many factors in this thing, and like I've been saying, and some others have said, you uncover one rock, and there's 5 or 6 more that go with it that you hadn't thought of. So, but these plans can change.
I've got one follow-up.
Yes, sir.
If I understood correctly, you said as long as the child got their work done that day or that evening, it would count, right? Now, you said-
Completing work, that's what he said. Completing work is a key component to attendance, yes.
If you said like sometimes a teacher may need you to check in at 8:30, or if they miss that counts as absent, will they be able to make that up later in the day?
They could bank it up.
We're gonna work with you. It's a point where we have to, with our plans, we have to put some safeguards and stuff in there. But we're gonna work with everybody. We understand that if they did it at 8:30, but they did it at 10:30, or they did it at 12, we're gonna work with everybody. We have to provide schedules for your child on a distance learning and say, these are the recommended times that we say that you need to be doing these things, and a teacher can put that in there. But like Mr. Davis said, we're gonna use common sense, we're all in uncharted waters, but we have to put things in there on our plan for schedules for our kids.
Your child might get Miss Smith for math, as an example, and Miss Smith may have 8:30 her time to, she may miss the live feed, she just may miss it, but your child may be okay and can do the work without that live feed that day. But that doesn't necessarily mean she's gonna be counted absent, she does the work. I mean, we're gonna use common sense.
Would it be able to go back to the feed? I mean, is this gonna be live, you won't be able to?
Ooh, you're asking some tough questions. Will that be?
No, everything is it's all gonna be like, if they were to do something live, it can all be recorded, so you can see it live.
Through the
It
Google
has that
Classroom?
built into Google, what they call Google Meet inside the Google Classroom, so anything that they do, or Zoom, or whatever, they can record it and have it attached. If you missed anything that the teacher did from that perspective, they can record it.
I mean, we want y'all to know, it is a tough decision. Keep child home or send them to school.
I understand 100%.
But thank you, your answer.
I understand the difficulty of the decision, the seriousness of it. I got a child in school, I get it. I'm right there with you, I promise you. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering what date are we gonna get the schedules and set up the, internet thing for the kids, the.
Good question.
account?
Good question. What date will you get a schedule or information all about this? So here's the thing. Tomorrow's the deadline, 4 o'clock, to register for distance learn. So I think a minute ago we were 507 students. So we got to hit the ground running once that deadline's up. That's why we got to have a deadline. We really had it last Friday, but I thought, we thought, you know, we got to have some parent meetings before we have a deadline. I was trying to rush it too quick. I apologize. So we delayed it and we put it off to tomorrow. So we got to hit the ground running. We got to work some more specifics out. Got to get some information to you. But when assignments and things start for distance learning will not be till the week of August the 17th. So you're going to have the week of August 3rd and August 10th to do some preliminary work. So it will be school-specific information coming from you from Dr. Eliff, middle school, from Mr. Wes Wilkerson, high school, and Miss Jennifer Burks will be, depending on where your child's going to school, you know, they will be sending you that specific information as to when you'll get those schedules. High school's got over 100 students, middle school's got over 100, so it's going to take them various times. Pickwick Southside doesn't have quite as many, but they're going to be working hard to get those schedules. I can't tell you the exact day, but they'll be communicating that to you.
Will I get it in the mail or over, how?
Y'all can probably do it by a robocall, or it won't probably be mail. It'll either be robocall or by email if they got your email. Because on the registration form, it's by email. Here.
I've got a question. I wanted to tell you.
Okay.
Do not forget to tell them all the money, the CARES Act that we've spent on the hand sanitizer and stands and those machines that go, just to let them know all the.
I thought I did.
Signage.
Oh, okay. I did. We've got like $41,000 worth of masks, hand sanitizers, and all kind of safety things coming. So appreciate you reminding me of that. Yes, sir.
I hear you talking about the scheduling of the classes for the distance learning.
Yes, sir.
We have a child that pretty much completes everything real quick. What does he do the rest of the time?
Well, I would say if it's my child, that's where a parent's gonna have to kick in probably and do some extra enrichment time and do some supplemental work.
Well, the part two of my question is he gonna be able to access more things off of the website?
We're gonna try to stay as far as in advance we can, but teachers are gonna only release so much work at a time. We can't get too far out.
A lot of your assignments are gonna have dates and times, so you probably wouldn't be able to complete something that's day 5 down the road, because it'll say start date on this one, end date on here. So there's some things that he wouldn't be able to finish to the end when they set their time frame and parameters. So he might not finish the whole week on Monday. Well, and there's a good, if the parameter's not set in there where you can actually get to it, because there's gonna be dates set inside the Google Classroom when they set when it can be looked at and when it can be worked.
A lot of good questions. Yes,
About the lunchroom, would it be dangerous about the one table about the kids sit on them?
lunches,
Yeah, the table themselves.
good question. Lunches. It is my hope that we can go to the lunchroom for lunches if it's in a safe manner. These administrators are trying to work on lunch schedules that will lower the number of folks coming at one time so that we can spread you out a little bit more. You got to keep in mind, we got over 100 students at this school that are looking to go distance learn, so that's going to be less students in the building, so that will help if that's the case in having so many. But he's looking, they're looking, all our administrators are looking for ways, if it's adding another lunch block or if it's staggering when you're coming, to make ways to keep the numbers down in here at one time. That's a good question.
Mr. Davis, Blair Cornbowers here. So here we have expanded our lunch blocks from 3 to 5. So even before the distance learning kids are held out, we're reducing the number of kids by a third in each lunch block. And we're going to have the seats marked off. Water will be done a little bit differently. The water fountains are off in all the buildings, but we'll have access to water, and all the serving tray, all the dishes, the silverware, it's all going to be disposable in every school as well. A lot to go by type deals. And then after each lunch block, the tables will be sanitized.
Lunch will be really different than normal. I mean, even high school will be really different. Normally, I've been up, if you've never been to high school for lunch, I know kids don't want to meet my child. Cringe, he does cringe when I come up there to eat lunch. I don't eat lunch with him, but I go up there. But if you've never been able to go up there and see the high school kids eat lunch, you need to before you die. It needs to be on your bucket list. But normally it's buffet style, and I mean, it's a sight to see. These kids getting this food in the lunch line. It's delicious food, but that's not going to happen right now. It's going to be a whole different way of. The food will be handed to them. It's going to all be disposable. It's going to be a whole different. It's got to be different. And our cafeteria staff does a phenomenal job. And Ms. Cheryl Cochran is on top of it. She's the one that's been responsible to be able to get all this food for these kids through our PEBT cards. I hope you took advantage of that. I hope you've been taking advantage of all the food throughout the time we were out from March to May. I think we served over 70,000 breakfast and lunch items. I hope you took advantage of that. So they're on top of it, but it's going to be different for lunches and breakfast. Yes, ma'am.
What about classes for the high school, like driver's ed and things where they need to be present, but they don't? You know, like if they're distance learning, we're gonna come up with something for, have a lot of teenagers, they need driver's ed.
So currently, driver's ed, for instance, where you have to get in the car and drive, we're not going to be able to offer that to distance learners initially. You know, our hope is second semester, students that choose to go distance, the cases are going down, vaccine, whatever it is, and they're coming back, and we're able to offer it in that time frame. But as of right now, we've got them scheduled in all academic required classes to graduate. So that class is an elective. So our hope is to get as many academics out of the way, many graduation requirements in the fall, your English, your math, your science, and get those and keep our fingers crossed that things get better and we're able to bring kids back to get them those elective classes like driver's ed.
Good, wear him out, right here, he's new principal, let him know.
Well, I've got a senior. She's worked really hard the last 3 years for her course. She's gonna need this year as far as plugs and stuff. As such as FLA, she's gonna get a leader cord. So are they gonna be able to do all their plugs, still sign up for those and go participate in those, and still be able to get those cords?
Currently, if a student chooses to distance learn and they want to play sports and they want to be involved in those clubs, that is, we are allowing that, they're going to be able to do that. Now, if they're having a meeting after school, obviously we're not going to have as many students in the building, and you may feel more comfortable them being there in a room where they can all spread out, but they're going to be allowed to participate you know, and anything extracurricular we offer at the high school.
And can you explain, I know there's some seniors in here, the dual enrollment.
So-
No English is online.
So dual enrollment, there's been a change for Jackson State. They are only doing online. They have just come out with that this week. We spoke to David Clark. We've been in constant contact with him because we didn't know what they were going to do. And everything through Jackson State is online. So your student takes English with Jackson State, it's going to be online. Now, if you choose to send them, we are offering through our teachers, David Rickman is going to teach U.S. history first period, Monday, Wednesday, dual enrollment class number 1. He's going to have another dual enrollment class number 2, U.S. history on Tuesday, Thursday. Christy Plunk is going to offer college algebra on one of those two combination of days, either Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. Those teachers are setting those courses up online. So let's say your student stays home, but they want U.S. history with David Rickman. They can take that with us. He's going to offer it online, and they can stay home. And then the rest of their school day would be as normal. So we will still have dual enrollment. On Jackson State, they will have 2 days that they have to come, and that's to take the midterm and to take the final. And that's Jackson State's requirement. Those have to be proctored in person with the teacher of record.
Where we're gonna do that in the hospital.
It'll be at the high school. Jackson State is not going to open their building to host any students, is what David Clark told us this week.
And my child only, gonna have to go really for personal finance, so you're gonna offer that one online?
We are offering personal finance online. So a senior schedule that wants to do the dual enrollment, and let's say they want English, that would be first period for them, English. Second period, we'd offer economics, personal finance, which would be distance learning. Those two go together because they're only 9 weeks apiece, but together they last a semester. They would get their bridge math, if that was a class they were in. If they were taking pre-cal or whatever, that would be online. So, and then English, math, and the personal finance, economics. We're going to offer every bit of that distance learning.
Come on, you get one more. Big two. I know you. Somebody else had one. I saw something. Y'all are a bunch of troopers. This is about like it was Tuesday. Yes, sir. My former classmate.
If a student is already registered for, distance learning, can they opt out for traditional before school?
All right, good. That's a good question. I meant to cover that. I'm glad you brought that up. So, question is, if they've signed up for distance learning, can they opt out and go traditional? Yes, but do it by 4 o'clock tomorrow. Do it quick so we'll know. We got to make schedules. We've got to get them scheduled. You can, if you've already registered for distance learn, you can change your mind. And here's the thing. I mean, again, I'm not telling you what to do, but just keep in mind, if you want to try traditional and you go a day or two, you go that first week and it's not working, you can always go distance learn. But once you go distance learn now, it's going to be a semester, okay? So keep that in mind. Yes, sir.
All right, touching back on the deal about the quarantine and how they're gonna do it, if they
Yes.
get quarantined, it might take 20 days, you said they can go business.
Yes, sir.
If they do their 20-some days, come back negative, they've been doing the distance learning, do they go back to school then? Even though they've been doing distance learning?
If they were quarantined. Yeah, if they're quarantined, you're not really what we call distance learning. It's just, you're still with the teacher you were. They just have the same, every teacher is gonna have access to that format, so they can assign their kids to do that while they're out, while they're quarantined. So you're not really distance learning in that format. You're still with that teacher, but they have the access for you to do the work. Because they're all working together to build this format. Yeah.
That's a good question. It's a good question. And back to what you said, maybe just think a minute. Somebody sent me something today. Said Governor Lee says we will be playing high school football this fall. So, we're going to line up and play football. So that's what he said. So I don't know. We'll see. Hey, yes, ma'am.
How are the cases looking in Hardin
cases are still climbing, it's my understanding. I don't know the breakdown of age groups. I know that there have been children in the last couple of weeks. I think there, was a group of children at one place that were together 2 or 3 weeks ago. So here's the thing, and it's good that you brought this up. From our call yesterday, the regional health, Mr. Kevin Morris is the regional health person that did a lot of the talking on our call yesterday. It's not a matter probably for most school systems in West Tennessee or probably across the state. It's not a matter of if you're going to have a case. It's a matter of when, especially when school's open. So we got to know that. We got to know that as adults, and it's more than likely we're going to face this. So that's why we have to have protocols in place. Yes. I couldn't hear you. Something about.
On the computer, there's gonna be a problem. Well, it will be a problem because,
Maybe a question Mr. Dr. Eliff may have to help you with. Are you going to be in middle school or high school?
they talk the computers is for doing it at home. You still be coming to school.
Okay. Are you middle school or high school? What do you? Eighth grade? All right, so Dr. Eliff will help you with that one. Okay. Any other questions? A lot of good questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, now, we did decide to go with the homeschool. How do we, the distance learning,
This is learning.
how do we go ahead and decide about that? You explained it, but I kind of.
If you want to go distance learn, you can go to our district website, HardinCoSchools.com, or you go to our district Facebook page, or come to our office tomorrow, because tomorrow's the deadline at 4. We have paper copies to fill out. Either way, either one of those. If you want to do it online, it automatically comes to us. Once you click submit, it'll come to us. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, or you don't have access to that, you can do a paper copy at our office.
Thank you. Hey, good luck with that.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Homework does have that, will, sometimes kid will like have what this
That's true. That could happen. Will homework go to the teacher? Well, teachers will probably be wearing protective gear. The homework's going to be graded and be back to the student. Thank everybody for coming. Yes, one more. Yes, I'm sorry. That's a good question. What are you, middle school or high school? So what are we doing on library?
We have a library plan that can check out books, but we are not purchasing AR.
No AR, but we're going to be able to check out library books. We're going to come up with a way to do library books, but probably not going to do AR. I'm not sure about elementary. Have we worked out library and elementary on AR?
Yeah, they're gonna be able to, but they're gonna have books that they're gonna bring to the classroom instead of bringing them to the library. They're gonna do some activities in there maybe once every 2 weeks, but the librarian is gonna actually.
Here.
Did a lot of you start talking about the distance learn, the way the library is?